Are you a manager who is eager to change the trajectory of your career? I have spent the last 23 years as a Fortune 50 leader learning from other industry leaders how to break free from limiting beliefs and habits. On the Might in Motion podcast, we focus on the 4 M's: motivation, momentum, mindfulness, and might. We bring you leaders from Fortune companies, doctors, and entrepreneurs. Their stories of living their own might in motion will inspire you to create your own action plan and achieve your goals. Welcome to Might in Motion. Today's episode of Might in Motion is brought to you by Pantheon FM, Fortunes Magnified. Pantheon FM is changing the world through entrepreneurship. In this community, you will find everything you need to create, amplify, and monetize your world-changing business. Join us at pantheon.community/register/LAUA. Dave Sanderson is a nationally recognized leadership speaker, accomplished author, and inspirational survivor of what is known as the miracle on the Hudson. As the last passenger off the US Airways Flight 1549, which had to ditch into the river, he took the lessons he learned from that profound experience in the frigid water and emerged from the wreckage with a mission to encourage others to do the right thing and share coping skills to address any adversity they may face. Dave, I am so excited to welcome you to Might in Motion.
Miranda, thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be with you likewise. Thank you.
You have such an inspirational story and career that I am just like I'm like giddy. Like this is one of those like interviews. I'm like, this is going to be fun. And I know that people are going to take things away from this. Many of us travel a lot. I'm in supply chain. I travel all the time. You're on a plane all the time, and it becomes kind of, all right, ho hum. Yeah, or I can ignore the safety message, all the because you've sat through it 5 million times. But that day for you was a completely different day. And maybe could you share a little bit about that experience and how that has now propelled you to help others?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're right. I travel a lot. And we had this conversation. I was in supply chain too. In fact, that day of January 15, 2009, I was actually doing a logistics and distribution center technology review for one of my future clients. So I was actually doing supply chain stuff in the logistics that morning. But that's what happened. And as we discussed, we trucks start early in the morning. Transportation starts early in the morning, and this distribution center started at 2:00 in the morning. So our day got done about 10:00 in the morning because all the trucks had run. We did what we had to do. So my goal was to get home as quickly as I possibly could because I've been on a 3-day business trip as we were traveling. So got on an earlier flight, which happened to be US Airways 1549. Nothing unusual, right? Get there a little early. Flights were delayed, but nothing unusual about New York in the winter and snow being delayed. That's no big deal. But as we know, about 60 seconds after we took off is when the explosion happened. And I had never heard an explosion on a plane. That's what caught my attention. Because I was in seat 15A, and just like what you said a moment ago, Mariana, I didn't pay attention. I flew over 100 times a year. I know everything. What else do I need to know, right, on a plane that I haven't been told over 100 times before, right? But all of a sudden something like this happens and you realize, I don't know what's going on in a plane because I've never heard an explosion like this before. And so I tell people, I think the saving grace to the whole thing initially was everybody heard only one explosion. And my belief, and I think you can talk to other passengers, they may have the same or different beliefs, is that if we would have heard bang, bang, and you're in New York, and you're in a plane, and you're heading towards Manhattan, you're having a different mindset. But since I think we all heard just one explosion, I think most people thought that, okay, we lost an engine, have another engine, no big deal, right? We'll get back. But that, as we all know now, it was both engines that exploded at the exact same second. So I think that had a lot to do with the reaction of the people inside the cabin, that no one lost their heads, but it got really quiet. Because I think at that point in time, people were thinking, okay, what am I going to do? because now you have a plane that's banking. You think you're going back to the airport, but now you're banking and you're heading straight towards what we now know is the George Washington Bridge. And you're going, okay, I've never seen that before, right? Because on a normal flight pattern, you're not going over the Hudson River. So all of a sudden you're seeing things you haven't seen before. And all of a sudden you hear from the captain his only words, "This is your captain, brace for impact." Now you know something serious is going on because, you never heard that command on a plane. So like you just said a moment ago, a lot of us who fly a lot, we take things for granted. But all of a sudden when things start going sideways and you may not be prepared. But like one thing I just got done doing a little podcast, another podcast, you are prepared. There's all these moments in your life that are there for a reason. But that's when you have to call on those moments, right? That you're prepared, but you got to get your mind right. And I think that's one of the first things I teach and talk about in my books. And I talk about how to manage your state when all stuff's breaking loose. Because that's when you have to manage your mind the most, because most other people are losing their minds at that time.
Yeah, I love how you're talking to that, because I have the distinct honor of being married to a combat wounded veteran, and we have 2 girls, and he's always talking about, not always, but he's instilling in all 3 of us, really, if there's an emergency, are you keeping your head? What should you do? And that could be is literally maybe watching a television show and something happens, and then he pauses it. He's like, "Okay, girls, what's the first thing that you should do if you're in this situation?" Right? I'm not sure many other families do that, but I think it's great because it's preparing even all of us mentally. Okay, well, if that did happen, what would you do? And you have every single one of us, to your point, has something that allows you to be prepared for whatever the situation is that you're in.
Yeah, every moment in your life has a reason and a purpose, and it serves you. You just have to be aware and take advantage of that. And I think a lot of people, and this is my personal belief, that go through life, hey, just go through life. That's the way it is. But each one of these moments, like this moment right here, is here for a reason and a purpose. Maybe to serve somebody who's going through a challenging time, right? So every moment's there for a reason. But yeah, I think what your husband's doing, I think it's a great pattern, because I think it's teaching your girls that, there are things in life that are going to happen. You will be out of control. But the one thing you can't control is your mind. If you can control this, everything else, you at least give yourself a chance to survive. If nothing else, give yourself an opportunity.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And I know that you help people face uncertainty, because we all face it in different parts of our life. And we kind of joked that when we met the first time in supply chain, there's always uncertainty. Like you just never know what's going to happen on any given day. I would love to, and you have a 12-step program of kind of how to help people maybe navigate when they're in a situation of uncertainty. What maybe 1 or 2 of those things that you could impart, especially to new leaders, because every leader is going to have moments where they're uncertain, maybe in themselves, they're uncertain in their leadership skills. What are some tricks that you would impart on a new leader?
Yeah, thank you for that, because I've really, since the Miracle on the Hudson, I've had the opportunity to be around a lot of leaders. And that's one of the benefits that I have. I'll be very candid. I get the opportunity to interact, meet, and be in proximity of people who have a kind of mindset. And one of the things that I learned probably like 5 or 6 years ago, since the Miracle on the Hudson, but I had the opportunity to sit down and speak with a captain of an American Airlines. We were talking about what happened that day, but he also shared a philosophy with me, which I think it would help everybody, especially when they get in those situations. It's called aviate, navigate, communicate. And what that means is, and when he was talking about is, you can look at that from an aviation perspective, meaning it means keeping your plane up, aviate, keep your plane up. Second, navigate, start putting together your game plan. Third, communicate, not only externally, but more internally with yourself. So I teach a part of leadership, a part of things that I coach and teach people on is how do you keep your plane going? So let's take for instance, called COVID. COVID hits. All of a sudden, one day, no one's going any place. We're locked down. We're wearing masks. Things are going sideways everywhere, right? And so now you got companies, and especially in my industry, which is called speaking, there are no events. And all of a sudden now people are asking for money back. I mean, all stuff's breaking loose, right? So the game plan, and I did it, which I didn't know I was doing it until he told me that I was doing it, is aviate. I had to figure out how to keep my game plan, how to keep my business going, how to keep my mind going, right? Then I had to put together a game plan. What am I going to do, right? I'm not having revenues not coming in, but I still got to pay a house payment and take care of a family. And so first I had to communicate with myself to make sure I was talking to myself in the mode that I could be able to be forward thinking and help people. But second, communicate effectively with my family and my clients. So it's a framework for leadership. So when you're a leader and all hell breaks loose, excuse my language, right? Hey, how am I going to keep my team going, right? How am I going to keep this thing going? So I give myself a chance to put together a game plan, a process. And then third, communicate internally and then communicate effectively. And that's one of the things I talk about what happened on the plane that day. People ask you about, was the captain talking the whole time? No, he said what he only had to say. He communicated effectively. This is your captain, brace for impact. That's all we needed to know, right? This is your captain, who he was. You better get ready. Because I think if he would have talked more, hey, we're going into the Hudson River. This is not looking good, right? Hey, we're heading for people will go crazy, right? Effectively communicate. So that's one of the lessons that I talk about. Second, something that I actually wrote about this week is, especially with leadership, do leaders know the rules they're getting of the companies they're dealing with, especially in sales? This is more of a sales talk, but how do you know the rules? Because everybody in a company, give you an example, the company you work with, you probably got 100,000 people. Each person in there, you have a different set of rules on how people deal with you compared to somebody else. So do you understand the rules in the game you're playing? And how do you do that is what I call A to I, is having access to influence. How do you build that influence with that person? Second, I talk about everybody needs a Sherpa. Everybody needs that Sherpa that can give them guidance. Because one of the things I learned about a company that I was dealing with, Mariana, in Atlanta, which is not your company, but another very large consumer products company that I was dealing with, is I did not know the rules of the game.
Yeah.
So I had to find somebody inside to be my Sherpa, because I was getting my backside kicked, because every company's got different ways they approach the way they do business, right?
That's right.
Especially supply chain, procurement. They have different ways they negotiate. I'll give you a perfect example. I was with Oracle during COVID, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I was in healthcare.
Yeah.
You're in the busiest industry during COVID. And so all I was trying to do is keep my business going, right? How am I going to make an income? I'm on commission, right?
Right.
So one of the things that I did is I was calling 5 people a day just to check in and to keep my sanity likewise, right? Just so I could talk to somebody. But I call somebody. This is somebody in supply chain, so you'll get this. And I called him. He's the director of supply chain of this healthcare organization. Said, "Is there anything I can do to help you?" So I said, right? And I was just being flippant, Kayla. It's like, what can I do to help you? He goes, "Well, I need masks." Okay. And I said, "Okay, so you have a challenge." He said, "Listen, we need over 100,000 masks a month, right? Because every time you walk in and out, you need a mask. And there were no masks to be had." So I said, "Give me a couple minutes." And I worked my angles, I worked my connections, and I found an organization, a company making masks in Indiana, N95 mask in Indiana. I hooked them up.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, but what we found is this, and you'll appreciate this. So I'm helping fix a problem for my client. All right, brilliant. That's great. But what we found is this: their process was broken. And what I mean by that is this: is that they had a process on procurement and supply chain, how they go do things, right? Had a process. And the CFO said, "I need mask. Get the mask." But the supply chain people said, "Well, we got 12 steps we have to go through." And by that time, the masks were gone.
Yep.
Now you contrast that with a private hospital that I was working with in Miami, who made a call and then have all those processes, and they had masks the next day. So that's one of the lessons I learned, on a plane, right? Is you have to be able to be flexible. Likewise, you have to be able to pivot. When all stuff's hitting the fan, it's the wild, wild west. You got to be able to handle the problem at hand, right? Don't worry about everything else that's going on around you. And like General Schwarzkopf taught me when I had the opportunity to be around him, he told me the story. He said, I had to keep the main thing the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the main thing for him was kicking Saddam out of Kuwait. It wasn't all this other stuff, right?
Right.
So that's another lesson I talk about in leadership and in my book is how to keep the main thing and keep your eye on the focus. And I used a story about healthcare because it was evident that, yes, we could fix the problem, but with all the different processes they had, it was going to take 10 days to go through all these processes. And by that time, somebody else had the mask.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we see that a lot in supply chain, right? And those that can be creative, that are willing to take a little bit of a risk to do the right thing. It's so imperative, especially if you're dealing with sales, frontline customers, like you mentioned, healthcare. They might not their customer, but they're also providing a service. Right? When you have that forward focus, it's amazing what an organization can do. And sometimes there might be a lot of minutia on process, but you're able to start circumventing that when you're in a state of potential crisis.
Yeah,
and
you have
being able to have the courage to do that.
Yeah, you have the executive team who sees the problem, the vision, and all they say is execute. And down here, they want to execute, but it's like if I go out of my protocol, then I'm going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like you just said, sometimes you got to take a risk because the right thing is we got nurses that need masks.
That's right. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything else, we'll have to figure everything else on the backside. It was the right answer, but they couldn't do that because they were so locked in. Right?
Yeah.
They didn't want to they want to put their job on the line potentially.
That's
to do
right.
the right thing. So they suffered. They suffered.
So you have you've also talked a little bit about you went through a traumatic event, and people in their everyday lives might encounter traumatic events that may not be at the scale of what you went through, of an actual plane crash on a river and having to be out there in frigid temperatures and ice cold water and all the things. But sometimes people get stuck, even if it's a smaller traumatic event. And what you've seen is people can get stuck or they can grow, and they can kind of push past that and take that potential trauma and turn it into something really phenomenal. You've been able to meet with a lot of veterans and different organizations as well. So you've seen that in that space as well. What do you think is the difference between what makes some people stuck and other people grow? And how can maybe you learn the skills or hone the skills so that you could be that growth person instead of the one that gets stuck? Great
question. A couple things. And I actually talked about this in my TED Talk that I did, because this is an issue that happens a lot. People go through a traumatic, it doesn't have to be a plane crash. It could be they have a health scare.
That's right.
They have a family member who has passed away, right? It could be, there's 1,000 of them, right? There's 1,000 defining moments. But one of the things that I learned is the meaning you attach to something produces the emotion in your life, and emotion is your life. So whatever meaning you attach to something is how you're going to react. So one of the key things on how I help people is reframing the meaning of what they're seeing and what they're doing. Because what I found, especially even after the miracle on the Hudson, some of the passengers went down a different direction than I went. Yeah. All right. They went down depression even to the point where some had PTSD. All right. Yeah. And that happens because the meaning they were attaching, it was a devastating experience. Yeah. The meaning that I attached, it turned out to be a blessing for me because it opened up an opportunity for me to serve at a different level. So, one of the ways you do that is you help people reframe the meanings. And that you do that by, number one, by asking different questions. The second is what the first thing you do when you have somebody in that situation. This is what I do and have done with a lot of the military folks that I've had the opportunity to be with. And not only when I swim with the SEALs and special ops, but some of them who are in challenging situations. They're transitioning out. They've lost focus. They don't know what they're going to do, and they're stuck. Yeah. And the first thing that you have to do is you have to manage what's called state management. You have to be able to break the pattern, the state that they're in. And you do that in one of three ways. You do that through your physiology, the questions you ask yourself, what's called your internal dialogue, or third, what you focus on. And so the first thing that I do with anybody is I look at the state that they're in. And the fastest way to change it is through your physiology. And that's why you can see people get up and move around, Because when you move, you change the way the endorphins react in your body. When that happens, is what changes in your mind.
Yep.
So fastest way is physiology. But sometimes that still doesn't get it, right? You can move around and somebody's still like this, right? Second thing is the questions you ask yourself. Because most people, Mariana, ask themselves lousy questions.
Yeah.
Like, why does this always happen to me? Why can I get this done? This person always treats me this way. Instead of asking more empowering questions like, if I could get this done, how would I do it? So the second thing is changing your language patterns, number 2. But number 3 is the most powerful way. And this is the way it's harder for most people. But this is what makes people go from being an average person to being a genius, is what they're focusing on. And that's how the captain managed his state during the miracle on the Hudson. He couldn't get up and walk around the cabin, right?
Right.
We couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. He couldn't do that. And he couldn't have time to ask questions. He said he had like 2 minutes.
Right.
So the power of focus, right? And he put everything he had into focusing on how is he going to get that plane down in one piece to give people a chance to live, right?
Yeah.
So the third way is what you focus on. So the third way, if your physiology doesn't work, and if you can't get them to ask different questions, they're still running the same pattern of stupid questions in their brain. You got to get them to focus on something bigger than themselves, something bigger than themselves. And that's why when you see people who are in that situation where they may be suicidal or looking at a different way to out, is you got to redirect their focus on something that's more important, such as their family, such as their kids, right? Something bigger than themselves. Like, I remember being with somebody. It wasn't me who did this. I saw them do this. So I saw the pattern. And he really talked about, do you really want to miss your daughter's wedding? Do you really, you'd be that selfish, right?
Yeah.
It had him start focusing on, I've got to be there for my daughter's wedding. The change that focus gave him that opportunity to change that direction. So the second way is to manage your state: physiology, language patterns, focus.
I love that. I love how a few times you've mentioned serving, and then that what really helped you is it allowed you to, it gave you another opportunity to serve others.
Right.
Many times when people are in a negative space, to your point, the fastest way to get out of that is serving somebody else.
That's right. Giving first. Always give first.
Yeah, that opportunity to give to others is just it's a phenomenal way to go and really help level up your thinking and your the way you come to the table, like across the board.
Yep.
And so I always look at leadership in that way too. Are you acting as a servant leader, or are the things that you're doing, are they all self-serving, or are you helping others? Because when you start helping others to grow, like you end up with a crew of ride or die people, right? That no matter where you are in your career, no matter what you do, they're going to back you because you back them at some point in time.
Yeah, exactly. And I share a strategy that I learned once again from when I was at my time with General Schwarzkopf. He talked about how 5 plus 15 is greater than 15 plus 5. And at first I didn't understand what he was talking about. And I want to talk about this in military terms. You can translate this to business. But he was talking about, he said most of the time he can tell a difference between a manager and a leader like this. He goes, he'll give his lieutenant or his manager, whatever you want to equate it, a project, right? And he said, if they're a manager mindset, what they'll do is they'll get their troops together and say, okay, this is the project. This is what has to happen. This is when it has to happen. This is where it has to happen. This is how it has to happen. And then give their troops 5 minutes to say, okay, you can ask me some questions. But what a leader will do is this. Here is the project. Now, you need help, ask me questions. If not, you figure it out. And empower people. Which builds them up, to empower them to figure it out. It may not be exactly the way the leader wants it, but the leader's focused on the outcome.
That's right.
Not focused on all the minutia that has to happen. This is the outcome. Right. So do you want to be a leader in a company, or do you want to be a manager? If you want to be a manager, don't empower your people and tell them how to do it, and you'll look like a star, or make other people look like a star.
That's right.
Which one? Who do you want to be?
I love that. I love that so much. You have a lot of cool things coming. You've got a magazine. You've got, I think, a new book on its way. You've got a new workshop where you dive into things like the leadership quadrant. You want to tell us a little bit about these 3 amazing things you have upcoming?
Well, thank you. Yeah, number one I love my magazine. And Kaylee, Marianne, I never thought I was doing a magazine. But about a year and a half ago, I just got off stage in Scottsdale. And a lady said, "You need a magazine." I said, "Listen, I'm not Oprah. I'm not Joanna Gaines, right? I mean, what do I have to offer in a magazine, right? No one reads magazines." "Oh, yeah, people read magazines." I said, "Okay, all right, you got my interest." So I started this magazine. It's called Moments Matter. And what I did is I asked people to find a moment in their life. Was it the trigger moment, the one that really was, I would say, a defining, or maybe a defining moment, but the moment that helped them accelerate to become who they were. And all of a sudden, I had people telling stories and showing people how they took their defining or that moment to become who they become. So it gives people stories and ways and different reference points. So I love my magazine. I mean, you see the background. This is a spring edition with Amy Porterfield on the cover, somebody who I knew 25 years ago, who has now built a business of over $100 million of online business and teaching women, especially women, but also some men, but primarily women, how to build a business from a defining moment that she had.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
So yeah, go out. You can go to my website, DaveSandersonSpeaks.com. Go where it says books and magazine. You can download a copy, or if you go down to the bottom, just fill your name and information in, and we'll send you a copy and a physical copy of the magazine. My book called The Limitless Life, which you'll see over I forget which corner. I don't even know where I'm at. Behind me. It's the third book of my trilogy, and I don't know about you, but I grew up loving Star Wars. I was in high school. Star Wars. I thought Star Wars was cool, right? And so all I did was follow that model. Where if you follow Star Wars, you got Star Wars about Luke and Darth Vader, and then you went to how did Darth Vader become Darth Vader, and then you see what happened after Darth Vader. Well, The Limitless Life is my book about the lessons and strategies that I learned after the Miracle on the Hudson that you can take and be able to help build, I call a limitless life, a life that how you create your own flight plan for your future, how you embrace uncertainty, how you create opportunity out of that uncertainty. That's what the book's about. So I'm really proud of this book. It's the third. The first book's called Moments Matter. It's about that day and the moments we talked about the moments in your life,
right?
The moments that I grasp onto during the Miracle on the Hudson to help me get through it. From Turmoil to Triumph talks about my time with my first mentor, who taught me these lessons about how I grew and how these lessons of life, and how I turned my life from being average to having a triumph life, and then used the Miracle on the Hudson, that experience, and how that helped me do that. And the Limitless Life is those lessons after. So really excited about that. But what we're really excited about is we're building a workshop or a masterclass out of the Limitless Life book. About teaching these. Now, what I learned from my mentor is this. One of the things that I talk about and teach. One of the things he taught me, Marietta, is this: if you're a leader, you're expected to mentor somebody else. It's not a should or want. It's you must leave it with somebody else, because the last thing he made me promise him before he passed away in May of 1997 was, "Don't let this die with you." And so this is my mission. So this masterclass, all I'm doing is I'm giving the best of what I've learned, so I can help people take whether their business and their personal life, all these little distinctions, how they can build a limitless life out of just these little distinctions that I call compressing decades into days. Because it takes most people days, months, years to do. What I try to do is simplify these lessons that I've learned into an actionable item right now. You can do action right now to get that outcome right now, instead of taking a month, a year, a decade to get. So we're really happy of this workshop, and I'm really happy about this. So if you go out to LinkedIn, go out and message me. I'd love to give you more information about when these workshops and these master classes are going to be held, and you can attend and hopefully learn some distinctions.
That's fantastic. I love the theme of all these, because it's so relevant no matter where you are in your life, your career. And it sounds like these are things that, I could apply in my personal life, not just in my professional as well. And that I always love it when there's opportunities to really synchronize the two, because everything's integrated. There is no work-life balance. No. There's work-life integration. And when you can make things in a positive way, it's so huge. So
you got to invest in yourself first, Mariana. That's what I learned. If you don't invest in yourself first, I learned in my first business, they taught me the business processes, but they didn't teach me how to manage myself.
Right.
So I had to invest in myself, my own personal development. And that was the first lesson my mentor said: you got to do this. And every year I invest over 5 figures back into myself so I can be on that edge, on that
That's
leading
right.
edge. So yeah, you're exactly correct. I love the way you phrased that. It's work-life integration, not work-life balance.
Yeah. So people want to reach you. Is the
Yep.
best place to go Dave's Anderson Speaks.com? Is that the best?
Yep.
Like everything's just right there, right?
They can go right there. Is the best way to reach me, and we respond. You get me directly, or if you want to go to LinkedIn, every week I put on my blog, I share new content. Contact me on LinkedIn, and you get all the updates of what's really going on with all these opportunities and in programs from LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is David Sanderson at LinkedIn. So yeah.
Awesome. I love to write down my notes. You probably saw me scribbling with my special orange pen here. But some of the things that I wrote down that I just like to recap at the end, because these are my personal golden nuggets.
Okay.
I'm sure there's a million more in here, but one of the big things you talked about, aviate, navigate, and communicate. Yep. So aviate is that you gotta keep the plane up. You gotta know where you're going and make sure you keep that forward momentum in the right direction. Navigate allows you to make sure you're going in the right direction. You have that game plan, a process around what you need to do. And then communicate. That's both external communication, that could be to your team, it could be your spouse, whatever it is, your teammates. And then internally, like how are you effectively communicating with yourself as well, and that positive mindset. When we talked about uncertainty, it's like, hey, do you know the rules? And I love how you talk about having a Sherpa that helps you. There are times when I know when you said that word, I'm like, oh, I know in my mind immediately, I'm the Sherpa for this team.
That's right.
But that person's a Sherpa for me. And so it's this cool interchange that you can have in your career, in your life, that you can really apply everywhere. I love that. Right. We also talked a little bit about traumatic events and how they can either define people to be stuck or help them grow. And you talked about that is driven by the meaning that people attach to that event, and that's going to be the result. And so if you can reattach it and looking at events that might be seen as negatives into blessings and leveraging opportunities to serve, you can actually propel yourself out of being stuck into actually providing a service and value to others. 3 ways to get out of that being stuck. You talk about physiology, like actually getting up and moving. I love that. 2 is that internal dialogue. So ask yourself empowering questions instead of like, what does this always happen to me? Hey, how can I make a change and positively move forward? And then 3, focus. So like putting all of your focus into what that positive outcome is going to allow you to actually drive that momentum. You've got, and then you talked about how every moment in our life is preparing us for something. Like this moment right now between you and I and having this conversation is preparing us for something else in the future. Right. We may not know what it is, but when that time happens, you want to be prepared and be able to call on those moments. And you got some really cool things coming up. You've got your magazine, Moments Matter, which talks about different defining moments in people's lives. You've got your 3rd book in the trilogy. This one is the Limitless Life. Very excited to see that. And then really cool workshop coming up where you can press your decades into days. Yep. I love that. And so the best way to keep up with a lot of these things, like you mentioned, go to LinkedIn, follow you, go to your website, and all the connections are there as well. But those are some of the takeaways I took away. Wow.
Thank you
so much.
Nice job. I need to have you on my wingman with me every time so you can make sure you take copious notes because you're right on. Thank you so much.
This was phenomenal.
I'll leave that last one point you said. I'll just give you a different maybe way to we talk about the Sherpa. And the way I look at it and what I learned is finding your who's for your house. Okay.
The who's for your house.
Yes. Everybody's got house. And like, I'll give you an example. My business, when I started this thing, Mariana, I was really good at driving revenue. I was in sales. Mm-hmm. What I wasn't good at was accounts receivable and payable. So I was lousy. So I got myself in a situation where I was working hard, but I wasn't. So I had to find a who to be able to do that. And that was a how that I had to get done. I found a who, and all of a sudden my business is taking off. Right. So find that Sherpa, right? Find that person who give you that guidance, and you can be a Sherpa, and everybody needs a Sherpa.
Yeah, I love that. That is amazing. And it's a great end to this conversation. I just want, again, to say Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Might in Motion. I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you for tuning into Might in Motion. If you learned something about motivation, momentum, mindfulness, or might, please like, comment, and share. Thank you.